Okay, everybody, I have not done a live for a very long time. I'm actually just going to wait for this little blue circle. There we go. I'm excited to be here. I haven't done a live in so long. I'm so glad I remembered how to do it. As you may or may not know, I've had internet issues. There has been stuff happening, but it's all good. Okay, I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm happy to be back doing this live. So here's what I want to talk about today. Let me ask you a question. What are the places in your life where motherhood and or marriage, for those of us in relationship with children, they are intertwined, aren't they? Where are the places that motherhood and marriage have curtailed you, made you smaller? What parts have you buried or given up on, or put under the rug or put in the cupboard somewhere because they don't seem to fit anymore with inside motherhood and marriage? What are the ways that your dreams and your desires for yourself, your own life, have gotten smaller in motherhood and marriage? And by the way, this is not the fault of motherhood and marriage. This is not a commentary on why you should never have children or never get married. But I do believe that when we follow the good wife and the good mother rules, and we all have them, I didn't know how deep mine were until I had children and got married. When we follow those rules, we shrink our lives, and there are parts of us that are no longer acceptable within those rules. And so we drop them off. And we squeeze and we mutate ourselves to fit into this little box, which is good mother, good wife. So if you're like me, you've had an experience like that in motherhood and marriage, the places where it made you smaller or more quiet or safer instead of maybe what you wanted to be, which was bigger and louder and more adventuresome. And my first few years of motherhood and marriage, and for me, they kind of happened at the same time, I only felt what I had lost, which was I felt like my spirit had been extinguished. My rebel and my provocateur were gone. My erotic energy didn't know what to do with herself. She didn't understand what marriage was and how we do this inside of marriage. My adventuresome self, my spontaneity, my big life outside of the house, so many things shrunk for me. And I remember having this image of a steamroller, and that I was standing in the cement of a steamroller, and the steamroller was coming over me, and it was just going to flatten me. And what the steamroller represented was motherhood, marriage, but the good mother and the good wife version, and domesticity was just going to run right over me unless I was careful. And it was at that point that I decided that motherhood and marriage were going to make me even more of the woman that I wanted to be, and not break me, not make me smaller or less brave or less myself. So the question for me was, wait, is it possible for me not to just reclaim all of these things about myself, reclaim my adventure, reclaim the dreams that I have, many of which do not involve my family, reclaim my erotic energy, reclaim my juice? Is it possible not just to reclaim those things, but to have motherhood and marriage launch me even more into where I want to be? And that is a big challenge, because as you know, if you've ever been on a soul journey, and all of us are on soul journeys, either consciously or not, we can be fine on our own. And then as soon as we come into relationship, that's when shit happens and shit gets hard. When we come up into relationship, we have to communicate, we have to tell the truth, we have to be vulnerable, and we have to be courageous. That's the hardest part. And so is it possible that this will actually make me even more of myself? And this has been my soul journey over the last 10 years. And part of it has been the challenging the idea of the good mother and the good wife. And that has been a huge part of what I have wanted to do in my work. How do I get to be the mother that I want to be? How do I get to be the wife that I want to be and not follow the rules? I don't like following rules. If you're like me and you don't like following rules, we'll give each other a high five right now. So what I wanted to share today was 3 tools that I use still to this day, because as you know, life happens. There is always we are always being challenged. Our sovereignty is always being challenged by new things or by old things. So we have to constantly cultivate these tools. So they're things that I do all the time, use all the time. And let me tell you what they are. 3 things. 1 is noticing, 2 is plugging back in, and 3 is looking past the dark. Noticing, plugging back in, looking past the dark. So here's the first one. And this is what's so fun about the first one, okay? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to solve anything. You don't have to know what to do. You don't have to have any big conversations. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is notice. And I want you to pay attention to the places of friction. So friction feels like anger, disappointment, blame, resentment. Let's start with those 4. So places where you're just pissed off and you're just grumpy and you're resentful, and the places that have that friction, heat in them, those are the places that I want you to start noticing. And you're just going to notice. You're going to notice what your thoughts are. You're going to notice what your behaviors are. You're going to notice what you actually truly desire. And you're just going to notice, and you're going to do it without judgment, and you're going to do it without blame, and you're going to do it with a sense of curiosity and a sense of play. Like, oh, aren't I the most fascinating creature in the world? It is so exciting to discover all these things about myself because I'm just so magnificent. I'm such a magnificent mystery. So keep it in that tone. There's no space in this community and in my work, there's no space for blame or criticism. So I'm going to use an example. I used to dance a lot, dance salsa a lot, and go out dancing a lot. And dancing is probably the one of the top 3 things that turn me on and juice me up and bring me into myself. And I used to go out all the time. And then when I got married and I had a child, and as you know, they both happened around the same time, I stopped doing that. So what I would do is notice, I noticed that I really want to go out dancing again. To be honest, at the beginning, as you know, you're like, all I want to do is sleep. So I didn't want to go out dancing for a while, but then I did. I noticed that I want to go out dancing, but it feels weird for me now that I'm a mother and a wife to go out dancing at night. Okay. I notice I have this guilty feeling because that's bedtime and that's family time. And I feel guilty leaving the house at family time. I notice that I also feel uncomfortable asking my partner to take over because it's a really busy time and it's really stressful, and I know it takes a lot of work for me, and I don't really like it, and I notice that I feel a lot of discomfort over asking for that. I also notice that I'm kind of uncomfortable even talking to my partner about it. In my case, my husband. What will he think? Does he think I want to go and dance with other guys? Is he going to trust me to go out? I notice. I notice that it's going to be weird for me not to be home saying goodnight to my kids because I'm going to be out dancing. And I'm going to have to tell them I can't come and tuck you in tonight because mommy's going dancing. Just notice. Just notice. The art of noticing as a first step, sometimes we can get really caught up into wanting to know how we're going to do something. And sometimes if we don't know the how, then we don't even want to go there. It feels like there's no step in between the shit and the fixing of it and getting to the promised land. When actually There is a whole opera between those 2 points. The great thing about noticing is that you don't need to know how. You're like, I don't even know if I want to take dance classes anymore, maybe. I don't even have to talk about it right now. I don't have to ask about it right now. I don't even have to figure out the conversations, what I would say, where I would go. Just noticing. Well done. You did the first step. And I'm going to take a quick little break because I wanted to show you this. Now I don't know if this is going to be backwards or not. I thought for a few hours after I got this cup and used it, I thought it said no regrets. It actually says no regrets. So I think that's pretty funny. Then we come to plugging back in. All of the tools that I do are about plugging back in. Some of them are about plugging into another woman, into sisterhood, into community, into support. For sure, absolutely critical. But they all start with plugging back in, to me. So here's what I want you to imagine. It's a little bit gruesome, but I think it works. So imagine a woman. And from this woman, extend these cords. They're cords with a plug at the end. And this woman has lots of cords and they're plugged in. One is plugged into her spouse and one is plugged into her kids. One is plugged into her community. One is plugged into her career or her creative project or her hobby. One is plugged into her parents. One is plugged into a sibling in trouble or a friend in trouble. Plug, 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 plug. And her energy and her time and the voices in her world come from all of those places. And it feels noisy, it feels confusing, and it feels disconnected because she's out here. She's out here. Now I want you to imagine what it would feel like to gently, without harming anyone at all, because it's totally fine, unplugging all of those cords and plugging them back into self. Unplug, 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 unplug. And here we are. All of that time and that energy here. And in this space, this is about my voice, my truth, my desires. This place for you is your truth, your voice, your desires. And if we never plug in, we never know what they are. And if we never know what they are, we will never want to change anything at all. Plugging back in. It is so crucial. You can plug in by going for a walk and talking to yourself. You can plug in by writing. You can plug in by journaling. You can plug in by sitting in a hot bath and talking to yourself. You can plug in sitting by a fire and just staring out the window and thinking. Plug back in. You can plug back in dancing. You can plug anything that fills you up and brings you back to yourself. So that's number 2, plugging back in. Number 3, looking past the dark. This is hard. The dark is when you're in the shit. The dark is when you're powerless and helpless and defeated, depressed and furious and sad and overwhelmed and just stuck. And it can be very hard to have any vision from that place, especially if we don't know how, if we don't know the how. So here's another beautiful, this is kind of like noticing in that the art of it requires you to really know nothing at all. You don't need to know how to fix anything. You don't need to know how to change anything. You don't need to actually do anything about this friction. All you have to do is use your imagination. So you imagine you're going to put on glasses, okay? And these are magical glasses. And these are glasses that allow you somehow to see past the dark, the friction, the shit, to the other side. And your desire is on the other side. You don't have to know how to get from the shit to your desire. Because as I said, there's a whole opera in between there. And the opera is beautiful, so you don't want to miss it. So you don't have to know. All you have to do is put on these glasses and think about, if this desire came true, for this, in this particular place in my life, the desire that I have, and we know what our desires are because we're plugging back in. What is possible on the other side of this friction when I get to my desire? What might that look like? What might it feel like? Because if we have nothing pulling us forward, if we have no belief, no certainty that there is some gold on the other side of the darkness, on the other side of the friction, on the other side of the places where we feel shut down, not brave, scared as fuck, then we will never move there. Sometimes we do move from pain, but it's so much more powerful to be pulled forward by desire, by something we want. So let me use my salsa dancing as an example. So I've done all my noticing. I notice I have all these thoughts about going salsa dancing, and I plugged back in. Oh, I desire to go. I desire to go and feel alive. I desire to get sweaty on the dance floor. I desire to be in the company of other people. So I know what my desire is from plugging in, and now I want to imagine. I'm in that, I know where the friction is, but I'm going to look beyond it. I'm imagining what is possible when I get to that desire. And I'm going out dancing again. Well, it means that I've had a conversation with my partner where I felt uncomfortable, I felt guilty, I felt afraid, but we had a conversation. And if we can have that conversation, if I can be that brave, what else can I say? And now we're more intimately connected because we spoke the truth to each other. That is a beautiful thing for our relationship. We are more deeply connected on the other side. I can imagine that I go out dancing and I come back and I'm so full of juice and I'm so glowy and I'm so freaking happy that I just bring home this gift for my kids and my dude. That feels amazing. I can imagine that I get out and I get so filled by the presence of other people, and I love having somebody else dancing with me and having their hands on my body, and it fulfills needs for me. And then I come home and I can release my husband more from those needs because I'm getting them met somewhere else. I can imagine what it is for my son and my daughter to see a woman, to see a mother who claims her woman and who goes after something not in the service of the family, just for herself. I'm not going off to learn something to benefit the family. I'm not going off to volunteer or do something for someone else. It's just for me. And I get to show this example so that if my son marries a woman, he will be like, of course you still do your own thing. And if my daughter gets married and has children, then she will know that that's a blueprint for how you can be as a mother. Amazing. I can imagine that, what would it be like, maybe I meet someone there and we do a performance one time and my family comes to see me and they get to see me as a woman, not as a mother, not as a wife, this beautiful queen in my own right. So looking beyond the dark is such a beautiful art. And as you can see, you don't have to do anything at all. Action happens after. These are 3 tools just to get you started, just to get you thinking, but they're very powerful. And I continue to use them all the time. Whenever I come up against a friction place, and we all come up against friction places, and you know what the friction places are? It's the next place where we want to grow. So it's beautiful. You're like, oh, okay, this makes me feel like shit. I hate being here because it makes me feel powerless and afraid, but I know that this is the next place of growth for me. It's like I need to shed my skin, and I'm growing and expanding, and then this is the next place of expansion for me. So it's exciting, and I'm excited and scared, and I'm excited and scared. Every time I come up against a place of friction, I have to do this. Okay, what's going on? What am I noticing? Okay, I'm noticing this is what's going on with me. These are my thoughts. This is what I'm doing. Cool. Plug back in. What do I really want out of this? What is my truth? What is my voice? What can I say to myself that I'm not saying out in relationship, in family, with my kids, to my spouse? What is this friction? What is the gift of this friction? What's on the other side of this friction? What is possible if I make my way through this friction? And that's what the carrot is. That's what the gold is. Oh, that feels glorious. That's what I want. Now I find a way. Now I figure out the how. The vision comes first. So if you're watching this on the replay, I would love to know what resonates with you here. What are you thinking about? What does it call out in you? And let's do this together. Let's break some rules together. Let's create motherhood on our own terms, and make it our own. Anyway, I will hopefully be here next week. Internet taken care of. It's always my pleasure to be here. I wish we could just be in a room together, drinking wine or coffee or dancing up a storm and talking. This is the next best thing. So I thank you for your attention and your time and your ears. Take sweet, sweet care of yourself, you juicy mama, and I will see you later.